You were never meant to believe that the force animating your life was mysterious or unreachable. But that's exactly the illusion that's been sold to you. Energy has been dressed in robes, hidden behind incense smoke, assigned to distant gurus or mystical ceremonies. The truth, however, is far simpler and far more confronting. Energy isn't reserved for the enlightened. It's the fabric you're stitched into. It's in every word you speak, every glance you cast, every invisible ripple you leave behind as you move through the world. You've been immersed in it your entire life, yet no one handed you the manual. But that manual exists, and while time and power structures tried to bury it under metaphor and layered complexity, it still breathes. Hidden in ancient fragments and veiled language, the teachings of the Corpus Hermeticum reveal not a religion, not a mythology, but a system. A set of instructions disguised as mystery, not to test your devotion, but to protect the potency of what it holds. When you finally stop reading it like a fable and start seeing it as a technical guide, something changes. You stop chasing meaning and start shifting your state. Because it's never been about belief, it's been about resonance. The ability to deliberately tune your internal world so that the external world bends toward it, without resistance. The idea that you could exert influence not through manipulation, but through coherence isn't new. It's simply been ignored, forgotten, even deliberately erased. Because a person who understands their signal no longer conforms to outside demand, they become untouchable, not by force, but by vibration. Right now, you're transmitting. Not sometimes, not only when you're trying, constantly. Every fleeting emotion, every persistent worry, every unspoken thought, it all leaks into the atmosphere around you. You're like a lighthouse, unaware you're casting light in all directions. The real question isn't whether you're emitting energy. It's whether you're doing it with intent or letting it scatter through your unresolved patterns. The most pervasive lie ever told was that energy is a concept, ethereal, fuzzy, inaccessible to the average mind, but you've felt it all your life. When you entered a room and instantly sensed unease without a word being exchanged, when a stranger's eyes on your back sent chills down your spine, when someone's mere presence settled your heart without explanation. These weren't tricks of the brain. They were interactions, not with logic or words, but with the frequency field that envelops every living thing. And yet you were trained to ignore it, conditioned to believe that the rational was superior. That measurement held more value than instinct, that facts mattered more than feeling. You were told to chase numbers, grades, titles, and quantifiable outcomes, while intuition was quietly buried under the pressure of proving your worth. But what if that wasn't an accident? What if the dulling of your subtle perception was part of a long-standing structure designed to keep you fragmented and easily steered? Because when you forget your nature as a broadcaster, you stop questioning the chaos around you. You assume the static is just life, not realizing it's your own feedback loop, generated by the inner distortions you've never cleaned. The teachings that survived, the real ones, don't hand you comfort. They hand you mirrors. They show you how your breath, your focus, and even your smallest emotion shape the signal you emit. And that signal isn't passive, it's generative. It bends the field. This is where Hermeticism steps in, not with superstition, but with subtle mechanics. It doesn't ask you to worship anything. It tells you how to align everything within you so that the force flowing through you stops short-circuiting. It tells you that your body isn't just a shell, it's an instrument. Your soul isn't just poetry, it's a conductor. And at the center of it all, there's something older than personality, something luminous, the spark that watches everything. When these parts are in harmony, energy moves through you like light through crystal. When they're in conflict, The signal scrambles and you feel stuck, no matter how much you try to change your outer world. So many people are grinding away at goals, frustrated that nothing shifts, assuming more action is the answer. But it isn't action that creates momentum. It's clarity. Clarity of frequency, clarity of intent. When your thoughts, emotions, and body language point in different directions, the field can't understand what you want. It doesn't interpret your desires. It mirrors your consistency. That's the brutal honesty Hermeticism offers. It doesn't comfort your ego. It tells you that misalignment is the only thing standing between you and transformation. You want love, but carry grief that you've never moved through. You want wealth, but cling to patterns shaped by scarcity. You long for freedom, but still embody the postures of survival. And all of that is broadcasting, even when your mouth is silent and your vision board is full. But you don't have to live at the mercy of your own chaos. These ancient texts weren't coded puzzles for fun. They were blueprints, not to build temples or shrines, but to rebuild yourself, your inner structure, your electromagnetic coherence, your capacity to channel energy in a way that reshapes what surrounds you. The world isn't ignoring you, it's responding to you, to your tone, to your inner landscape, to the harmony or disharmony between your breath and your thoughts. And what you don't shift within, life will keep reflecting until you finally get it. Thought isn't just an idea passing through your skull. It's a ripple through the medium you exist in. And repetition, especially when fused with emotion, becomes formation. You think a thought once and it flickers. You think it 100 times with feeling, and it starts carving grooves in your field like water shaping stone. That's how belief takes form, not through truth, but through momentum. And here's where most people get trapped. They think belief is an intellectual position, but it's not. It's a frequency pattern, an energetic boundary that defines what you allow and what you repel without knowing it. And many of these patterns aren't even yours. You inherited them, absorbed them, internalized them so deeply they feel like your own truth, but they're just programming, architecture you never questioned. The Hermetic tradition says, forget trying to believe. Start by observing. Listen not with your ears, but with your energy. Track what you're emitting when you think about your future. Feel what contracts or expands when you imagine change. That contraction, that's your signal. And until it changes, your life can't. When you breathe with attention, when you reclaim the moment, your field responds. You can feel it. Stillness sharpens. Space opens. The noise dulls. That's not just calm. That's your system reordering itself, and when you add intention, it amplifies. When you visualize, not as escape, but as transmission, you're sending coordinates into the matrix. You're telling reality what structure to grow. The mistake people make is thinking energy cares about what they want. It doesn't. It reflects what's consistent, not your desperate wish, but your practiced vibration. So if you say abundance but live in a mindset of lack, the field responds to the frequency, not the fantasy. Not because it's cruel, but because it's mathematical. That's what scares people. It's not arbitrary, it's exact. The way you show up, the thoughts you host, the way you treat your breath and body, it all becomes part of your field's equation. And the longer you remain unconscious of it, the more you'll feel like life is random or unfair. But it isn't. It's just mirroring a signal you never realized you were sending. Energy is sticky. It clings. Not because it wants to punish you, but because it needs resolution. Unfelt emotions linger in muscle memory. Unspoken truths hover like static. Rooms you enter change your mood, not because you're weak, but because you're absorbing frequencies unconsciously. And if you never flush them out, they accumulate. That's why rituals exist, not to impress the divine, but to reset the system. Cleansing isn't a superstition, it's maintenance. Breath is the first broom. Conscious exhalation moves energy. Water is the next conduit. Salt, temperature, immersion. It shifts charge. These aren't beliefs. They're biological. And once you've cleaned your field, you have to shield it, not with paranoia, but with presence. You imagine light around you, not because you're afraid, but because you're designing boundaries with intention. You're shaping what your system allows in. You're no longer porous by default. You become selective. And people feel it, not because you've said anything, but because your frequency carries a fence. But even shields get tested. Life throws shadows at you, pain, conflict, loss. And here's where most give up, but not hermetic practitioners. They take that density and transmute it, not by bypassing, not by pretending, but by using the raw material of discomfort as fuel. They don't ignore fear, they reassign it. They turn anxiety into movement, grief into clarity, anger into a cutting edge of truth. This is what energetic alchemy looks like, not escaping hard feelings, but refining them into power. You're not broken, you're overloaded. You've been absorbing charge with no outlet, no instruction manual, no rituals that match your rhythm. But the moment you start working with this current, you realize you're not fragile, you're just untrained. And that's about to change. You've heard the phrase, as within, so without. But it was never meant as poetic fluff. It's an instruction manual compressed into 5 words, a truth so direct that entire systems had to obscure it to preserve their grip on power. Because once you fully internalize that your inner state is not a passenger, but a pilot, the illusion collapses. You stop thinking in terms of reaction and start thinking in terms of architecture. No more waiting for life to deliver. You begin shaping the container that determines what it can deliver. And here's where the fracture usually happens. You're told to fix your thoughts, stay positive, focus on the good. But the mechanics aren't that simplistic. You can't fake a coherent field. You can't wrap fear in a smile and expect the signal to change. The universe doesn't respond to appearances. It responds to congruence. And congruence means your breath, your beliefs, your posture, your emotions, all vibrating in agreement. Anything less sends a scrambled message, and a scrambled message returns scattered outcomes. The teachings hidden within Hermetic writings are not concerned with morality. They don't care if you're kind or cruel, optimistic or pessimistic. They care about clarity, precision. Does your energy field broadcast a unified signal? Or is it full of static, ruptures, unresolved loops? That's what matters. Because energy doesn't interpret your excuses. It doesn't care if you had a hard childhood, or made mistakes, or meant well. It mirrors your resonance. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's why it's so difficult for most people to gain traction. They think manifestation is about craving something hard enough. But longing without alignment is just noise. Wanting without clearing your field is just shouting into distortion. You're not failing because you're unworthy. You're misfiring because your signal is fractured. Your field isn't just a passive glow. It's a structure, a network of frequency patterns informed by your memories, beliefs, habits, and posture. When your mind is tangled with doubt, when your chest holds grief like a stone, when your breath is shallow and erratic, you're not just surviving, you're broadcasting confusion. And confusion repels coherence. That's not magic, that's mechanics. This is why ritual and movement matter, not because they're fancy, but because they're functions. Your body is a lever, your breath is a dial, your attention is a conductor. The ancients understood that you don't fix energy by thinking about it. You fix it by moving it, shaping it, instructing it with deliberate form. Every motion made with presence becomes a code, a recalibration. Stretch your spine with awareness and you realign your signal. Breathe into your belly and you anchor clarity. Move with rhythm and you tune your field like an instrument. You've seen glimpses of this in martial arts, in dance, in yoga. But long before these were formalized, they were principles. They arose from the understanding that energy follows form, and form responds to intention. When you bow with sincerity, the field responds. When you spiral your arms with attention, it creates vortices of motion that your subconscious understands. This is why ancient cultures embedded energy work into their movements, not to worship but to wire the field. The body isn't just physical, it's a storage device. Muscles hold tension that thoughts forgot. Fascia retains trauma like a diary written in tightness. Your walk, your stance, your gestures, they're all broadcasting long before you open your mouth. People feel you before they understand you. And when your field is clean, clear, and consistent, your presence communicates more than words ever could. Think about those who seem to enter a room and shift its atmosphere without saying a word. That's not charisma, that's coherence. Their system is aligned, so the field around them organizes. It's not dominance, it's clarity, and clarity is magnetic. But most people have never experienced their own system in this state. They've been taught to escape their bodies, not inhabit them. They've been told to look outward for power. Tools, rituals, affirmations, mentors, anything but the raw signal flowing through their own spine. Hermeticism flips that. It tells you that you are the talisman, you are the altar, you are the ritual. And the cleaner your internal system, the stronger your ability to broadcast becomes. When your breath moves with purpose, when your movements carry intelligence, when your thoughts align with your truth, your entire reality begins to shift. Not slowly, not symbolically, structurally. You start noticing that timing lines up. Resistance drops. People respond to you differently, not because you said the right words, but because your energy became undeniable. This isn't something you learn once and master forever. This is a practice, a refinement. Every day your field is either being cleaned or clogged. Every conversation leaves a residue. Every scroll through social media transfers charge. And if you don't have rituals to clear that out, you'll carry energy that isn't even yours. You'll walk around filled with thoughts that were implanted, emotions that don't belong to your timeline, and confusion that isn't native to your soul. So cleansing becomes vital, not just emotionally, but energetically. Breathe like you're wringing out old frequencies. Move like you're shaking off static. Visualize smoke, not because it's theatrical, but because your subconscious understands symbols. See the grey mist leave your body. Watch it drain through your feet. Immerse yourself in water, not for luxury, but because water conducts and resets. Salt, heat, movement, these aren't indulgences. They're tools to sweep the debris out of your system so your signal can shine again. Then you protect, not with walls, but with awareness. Shielding isn't about fear. It's about definition. It's about holding your shape. Imagine light encasing your form, thickening your boundaries. Not to keep people out, but to keep your frequency sovereign. And over time, this boundary becomes felt. People sense when your field is disciplined. They respect your space without being told to. That's what real protection looks like. Not hiding, but broadcasting strength so clearly that nothing incompatible sticks. But life is still life. Density will come. Fear will creep in. Shadows will dance. And that's where the final piece comes in. Transmutation. The ability to take what's heavy and refine it, not through denial, but through transformation. You don't fight sadness. You feed it to the fire within you. You don't suppress anger. You alchemize it into clarity. Every feeling is energy. and every energy can be reassigned. That's the heart of Hermetic alchemy, not escaping the dark, but refining it into something luminous. Visualize a golden furnace at your core. Feed it your anxiety, your tension, your fatigue. Watch it burn clean. The output is never what you put in. That's the point. This is emotional recycling, energetic composting. You take the dense and turn it into directive force. And when you do this consistently, your system becomes unshakable. Not because you avoid challenge, but because you have a process to handle it. Most systems try to teach you control. Hermeticism teaches you calibration, to work with life, not against it, to meet chaos, not with resistance, but with resonance. You stop fearing what enters your field because you trust your capacity to transmute it. You stop bracing for impact because you know you can redirect anything that comes your way. The modern world sells you productivity hacks, time management tricks, life coaches, and wellness products. But none of it matters if your field is scrambled. You can buy a planner and fill it with goals, but if your internal architecture is full of contradiction, the planner is just paper. You can say affirmations all morning, but if your breath is tight and your posture is collapsed, the words float into a fog of static. That's the hidden root of stagnation, the mismatch between declared intent and vibrational truth. You don't get what you say you want. You get what your system is prepared to hold. And preparation means cleaning the old residue, aligning breath and movement, choosing thoughts like bricks you're building a temple with. Thought isn't just internal chatter, it's direction. And direction repeated with emotion becomes design. When you allow certain patterns to repeat unchecked, they become grooves in your field. Invisible walls that define what comes close and what bounces away. You don't feel them, but they're there. You wonder why opportunity dodges you, why love slips through your fingers, why joy never stays. It's not personal, it's architecture. You don't escape this by thinking harder. You change it by choosing differently. Each time a thought loops back, pause. Interrupt it with breath. Replace it not with false positivity, but with energetic accuracy. Choose a thought that feels grounded, empowered, aligned, and let that new groove begin to form. Over time, that becomes your default, and your field reshapes to match. This isn't mental gymnastics. This is energetic coding. Visualization isn't fantasy, it's instruction. When you see something clearly, when you feel it emotionally, and when you breathe it into your body, you're inputting data into your field. And your field, in turn, begins to reshape reality to mirror that data. Not because you're lucky, not because the universe favors you, but because you finally align the signal. This alignment isn't always instant, but it's always effective. Small shifts in internal consistency lead to larger changes in external form, and the more you refine your process, the faster the field responds. Not because it's biased, because it's mechanical. It wants coherence, it rewards coherence, not morally, mathematically. You've been living inside your own echo, every pattern repeating, not to torment you, but to reflect what you've been transmitting unconsciously. Now you're becoming conscious. And that changes everything. You're not broken, you're awakening. You're not cursed, you're misaligned, you're not powerless. You've just never been taught the architecture of energy. But now you see the blueprint. And what you do with that knowledge is entirely yours to decide. It's a strange thing, waking up to the fact that you've always been shaping reality, not with brute force, not through effort or chance, but through the quiet pulses of your inner state. Everything you've ever called a coincidence, a missed opportunity, a stroke of luck, was feedback, not from some external force passing judgment, but from the energetic system you've been emitting without pause. You've never been passive, you've simply been untrained. The system you live in thrives on this ignorance. It teaches you to obey external structures, to pursue symbols of success, to treat your body like a tool and your mind like a filing cabinet. It rewards compliance, praises predictability, and distracts you with 1,000 shiny incentives, and all the while your actual power, the real, visceral, world-shaping force that lives in your frequency, goes untapped. Not because it's hidden, but because you were never shown how to recognize it. This is why the Hermetic texts were buried in allegory. Not to confuse the reader, but to protect those teachings from being diluted, commercialized, weaponized. These weren't bedtime stories for mystics. They were schematics, diagrams encoded in metaphor, designed to teach the mechanics of influence, not over people, but over pattern. They whispered a truth too dangerous for institutions built on control, that every human being is already plugged into the current that moves reality. The only difference is whether you're steering it or being dragged by it. Think about the weight of that. The field is not reacting to your dreams, it's responding to your structure. If your nervous system is on high alert, if your breath is shallow and erratic, if your mind loops through past wounds like a broken record, then your signal isn't clear, it's chaotic. And chaos sends mixed instructions to the world around you. It tells the field, I want change, but I'm anchored in fear. I crave growth, but I vibrate with hesitation. And the field, being precise, mirrors that contradiction. That's why nothing changes. Not because you're unlucky, not because the universe doesn't care, but because you're out of sync. You're trying to broadcast one message while your core is radiating another, and the field listens to the dominant frequency, not the one you wish you could hold. So how do you shift this? Not by force, not by pretending, but by aligning. Thought by thought, breath by breath, action by action. You begin to train yourself like an instrument, tuning your nervous system, refining your posture, choosing your focus with the care of a sculptor. You become deliberate, and slowly, the fog lifts. You begin to notice when your energy is leaking, when a conversation drains you, when a thought tightens your chest, when a room collapses your spine. You stop blaming the world and start adjusting your signal. You stand taller, not to impress, but to breathe fully. You speak less, not to be mysterious, but because your field is already speaking. You hold presence like a flame, and people feel it before you even say a word. This is the quiet revolution Hermeticism inspires, not rebellion through noise, but transformation through resonance. You stop reacting, you start emitting, and everything shifts. Most people believe that power lies outside of them, in the right words, the right rituals, the right timing. But none of that matters without internal voltage. You can chant ancient phrases until your voice is gone, but if your mind is filled with noise and your breath is tangled in anxiety, the words won't land. You can surround yourself with sacred objects, build altars, wear symbols, but without inner clarity, they're just decorations. The tool doesn't create the signal, you do. The symbol doesn't hold the power. It amplifies what's already there. This is the inconvenient truth that spiritual marketers don't want you to realize. Because the moment you understand that everything external is secondary to your internal frequency, the market collapses. The middleman becomes obsolete. You no longer need permission or validation or access to some secret lineage. You've always been the source. And that's terrifying for those who profit from your doubt. But it's liberation for you, because now you stop searching, you start building. From the inside out, you treat your attention as currency. You stop spending it on drama, on distraction, on endless loops of comparison. You start investing it in alignment, in silence, in breath. You choose thoughts like you're choosing ingredients for a potion, carefully, precisely. You move your body not just to stay fit, but to shape energy. You treat your rituals not as performances, but as recalibrations. When you wake up, you no longer scroll. You center. You anchor your breath. You tune into the tone your body is carrying. Is it tight? Is it heavy? Is it clear? And if it's not, you don't panic. You adjust. You stretch. You breathe. You shake the static off like an animal resetting after a chase. You don't judge your state. You shift it. Throughout your day, you observe. You notice when your field dims, when your clarity wavers. You don't shame yourself, you refine. You pull your awareness back like a lens coming into focus. This is what training looks like. Not dramatic breakthroughs, but microscopic choices made consistently. And over time, your field becomes unmistakable. People don't understand why they feel better around you, why their guard drops, why their posture lifts. It's because your coherence is contagious, your signal is clear, and the field recognizes clarity. It always has. But even then, you don't get cocky. You stay humble, not performatively, but energetically, because you realize power doesn't mean control, it means responsibility. You learn to hold energy like a vessel, not a weapon. You become the kind of person whose presence calibrates a room, not because you seek influence, but because you've mastered your own tone. This is what hermetic sovereignty looks like. Not superiority, not spiritual bypassing, but radical coherence. You live in tune with your own frequency. You stop waiting for signs. You become the signal. And when the world pushes back, as it will, you don't collapse, you shift. You read the feedback. You refine your broadcast. You see resistance not as punishment, but as guidance. You understand that the field is always teaching you how to align more deeply. And the deeper your alignment, the less effort is needed. You stop forcing, you start flowing. And flow isn't ease, it's precision. It's the universe recognizing that you've stopped sending mixed messages. At this level, rituals become simple. A breath becomes a reset. A gesture becomes a spell. A walk becomes a transmission. You don't need candles to feel powerful. You don't need crystals to feel grounded. They can help, yes, but only when you're already carrying the current. Otherwise, they're just accessories. The body becomes your laboratory. You stop seeing it as flesh and start seeing it as frequency. Every movement carries charge. Every posture shapes your output. Your spine is your antenna. Your breath is your voltage. Your gaze is your laser. When all three align, you don't just feel different, you become different. And the field treats you accordingly. This is why posture is sacred. Slouching isn't just poor form, it collapses energy. Uprightness isn't just confidence, it's openness. Your body tells the field how to respond to you long before you speak. That's why embodiment matters. Not as a trend, but as technology. And it doesn't end there. Even your walk can become a ritual. Your eating habits, your sleep, your conversations, all of it shapes your field. You don't have to be perfect. You have to be aware. And in that awareness, you find your power. You stop trying to control people. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing the world to confirm your worth, because you already feel the shift internally. You already know what's coming before it arrives. The field whispers back to you through synchronicity, through ease, through opportunity that feels effortless because it matches your frequency. And even when things go dark, you don't panic. You know how to stabilize your system. You know how to cleanse, to reset, to redirect. That's real resilience. Not pushing harder, but tuning deeper. Eventually, you begin to see life differently. Not as something happening to you, but through you. Not as a maze to solve, but as a mirror to polish. You realize that you're not here to fight the world. You're here to design it. And design isn't a one-time act. It's a rhythm, a ritual, a state of being. The world will still try to pull you back into chaos. That's its job. but your job is to hold the tone, to be so anchored in your own current that nothing can shake it, to embody such coherence that your mere presence alters environments. You're not here to impress, you're here to express, not through words, but through frequency, not through effort, but through clarity. Because once you remember who you are, not conceptually, but energetically, you stop playing small, you stop dimming, you stop conforming, and you start building, quietly, consistently, powerfully, not because someone told you to, but because the field is already listening. And now, for the first time, you're speaking its language.